In December of 1980, on a cold, dark night, a group of U.S. Air Force personnel walked into a frozen forest in eastern England. They weren't on a leisurely stroll. They were following a cluster of strange, bright lights that had descended through the trees. During their investigation, they physically touched an unknown object. In the days that followed, elevated radiation levels were detected at the site. This wasn't just a spooky campfire story. Within days, the deputy base commander filed an official memo detailing the events and sent it directly to the British government. Whatever happened in Rendlesham Forest wasn't folklore. It was logged, measured, and reported through official military command channels. This is the story of what many call Britain's Roswell, the Rendlesham Forest incident. The events unfolded near two crucial NATO air bases, RAF Bentwaters and RAF Woodbridge, located just outside Ipswich. This wasn't some remote, quiet corner of the world. It was a strategically sensitive Cold War zone. At the time, American nuclear weapons were stored nearby, making security exceptionally tight. The personnel stationed there were highly trained observers, not just civilians with a camera and a wild story. These were men and women tasked with protecting some of the most powerful weapons on Earth. It all began just after midnight on December 26, 1980. Airmen on duty at RAF Bentwaters noticed something highly unusual: bright, pulsating lights descending into the nearby Rendlesham Forest. Their first thought was practical, and based on their training, a downed aircraft. They did exactly what protocol required. They formed a small team and went to investigate, prepared for a crash site and potential survivors. 3 servicemen entered the woods. As they pushed deeper between the dark, silent trees, the lights grew more intense, casting strange shadows on the forest floor. And then they saw it. A triangular object, about 9 feet long and 7 feet high, was resting silently in a small clearing. It was described as black, smooth, and glassy, with no visible signs of an engine or any form of propulsion. There was no noise, just an eerie silence. One of the men, Sergeant Jim Peniston, cautiously stepped forward. He reached out and touched the object. He later reported that the surface felt warm, like metal that had been recently heated. As he circled the craft, he noticed strange symbols etched into its exterior. They weren't letters or numbers he recognized, but simple geometric markings, almost like a cross between ancient hieroglyphs and modern circuitry. He took out his notebook and carefully drew them. Then, the object began to glow brighter and brighter. Without any warning, it lifted straight up off the forest floor, maneuvering silently between the dense branches. There were no wings, no rotor blades, no fiery exhaust, just silent, rapid acceleration as it vanished into the night sky. The men, stunned, ran back towards the base, radioing what they had just witnessed. Base command, likely bewildered by the report, ordered them to return immediately. The next morning, investigators returned to the site. What they found there changed everything. Pressed into the hard, frozen soil were 3 distinct triangular impressions, exactly where the object had been seen resting. High above, they found freshly broken branches on the trees, consistent with something rising vertically through the canopy. There were also burn marks on the forest floor. Most significantly, they took radiation readings using standard military-issue equipment. The levels were noticeably higher than the normal background radiation of the forest. They weren't lethal, but they were unquestionably abnormal. This wasn't just a distant light in the sky anymore. The evidence on the ground proved that something physical had occupied that space. But the story doesn't end there. 2 nights later, it came back. This time, Deputy Base Commander Lieutenant Colonel Charles Halt personally led a team into the forest to investigate the renewed sightings. He was a no-nonsense, career military officer, not someone prone to flights of fancy. His team was equipped with Geiger counters, flashlights, and portable audio recorders. What followed was captured on tape, a recording that still exists today. On that tape, you can hear Colonel Halt calmly narrating the bizarre events as they unfold. He describes glowing, orb-like objects moving silently and rapidly through the trees. He notes the lights splitting apart into smaller objects, then reforming. At several points, he describes beams of light descending from the sky, some of which appeared to be directed toward the highly sensitive weapons storage areas on the base. Throughout the recording, Halt's voice remained steady, that of a trained observer documenting an anomaly. At one point, he quietly says, "There it is again." "What is it?" "We're seeing strange, lights in the sky." There's no shouting, no panic, just controlled observation in the face of the inexplicable. That audio recording is now a famous piece of evidence. And so is Halt's written report. Days after the second encounter, he submitted an official memo titled Unexplained Lights to the British Ministry of Defence. In it, he documented everything: a landed craft of unknown origin, precise radiation measurements, unidentified aerial objects maneuvering at impossible speeds, and beams of light directed towards sensitive military facilities. This wasn't a story leaked to the tabloids. It was a formal report that moved through official command channels. So what was the military's public explanation for all of this? Misidentified stars, a nearby lighthouse on the coast. Natural atmospheric effects like ball lightning. These might sound like reasonable explanations on the surface, but then you have to remember the facts. Multiple trained military observers witnessed the events over 3 nights. Physical ground impressions were documented and photographed. Radiation anomalies were measured with calibrated equipment. And a senior officer, the deputy base commander, put his name and reputation on an official report detailing the encounter. Hallucinations don't file official paperwork. Skeptics argue it was a combination of stress, confusion, and optical illusions caused by the Orfordness lighthouse beacon. Believers are convinced it was contact with extraterrestrial technology. But here's what makes the Rendlesham case so different from almost every other UFO story. This wasn't blurry, shaky footage from a questionable source. This wasn't a story from anonymous witnesses who couldn't be verified. This was NATO military personnel, operating on nuclear-ready bases during the height of the Cold War. These were people trained to identify every known type of aircraft, friendly or hostile. They were people who don't panic over headlights or lighthouses. And they were people who meticulously documented everything they saw. Even today, decades later, none of the key witnesses have recanted their stories. No one has come forward to admit it was a hoax or a fabrication. And no declassified military project, secret aircraft, or drone technology from that era has ever been revealed that could match the craft's described appearance and silent, vertical flight capabilities. Rendlesham Forest remains one of the most credible and compelling UFO encounters in modern history. Not because it's the most dramatic or spectacular, but because it's the most procedural. Lights were observed, an object was contacted. Physical evidence was recorded, an official report was filed, and then, near total silence from officials for years. Whatever entered that forest in 1980 left behind more than just memories. It left impressions in the soil, elevated radiation readings, and a trail of military paperwork. And it left a question that still hasn't gone away. What feels warm to the touch, moves silently through the trees, and methodically surveys nuclear weapons facilities in the middle of the night? Some mysteries don't just ask for our belief. They leave behind documentation, daring us to find an explanation. Thanks for watching. If you found this story as fascinating as I do, don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more deep dives into history's greatest unsolved mysteries. See you next time.